Hey everyone, Clawland here. You're watching another episode of Left Hand Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at a 2014 Kickstarter called A Duel Betwixt Us. A Duel Betwixt Us, like I said, was released in 2014 after a successful Kickstarter campaign published by Game Salute and Larob Studios and was designed by Rob Fitzpatrick. Now this particular game is a two-player card combat. As it says, it is a comedy of manners and mayhem. So essentially you are two gentlemanly people that are fighting each other with pretty much anything you can get your hands on. So you're going to have cards and miners and mining ore, putting those ingots into weapons and then fighting each other in duels. And the first person to gain the most favor is going to win. Playing through this game could take anywhere between maybe 25 and 45 minutes depending on how things go. And while this is a two-player game, I think there's definitely the ability to house rule in multiple players. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But for now, let's take a look at what comes in the box. I'm going to tell you how to play this game, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll give you my thoughts of A Duel Betwixt Us. Inside the box, the most prominent component that you can see here is that wonderful Chinese air. It smells nice. But seriously, you have here a playbook. It is in full color, gives plenty of examples, it's very clear, it's easy to understand. The game itself is not that complicated, but they make sure to lay it out very, very easily, and with a little bit of humor in here, which is always nice. You also have a quick reference on the back of the rulebook, which is nice as well. You make a couple copies of that if you need to, although there are cheat sheet cards as well that each player will get. And then you're going to see four packages, four card boxes here that have your cards in them. Now these boxes are way too big for the cards, so hopefully that means that they're planning on bringing out some expansions that'll fill these boxes up. Even sleeved, you're not even going to use up half the box volume. But it's kind of nice. They do tell you, or to have pictures on the back of the boxes here of what cards to put in them, just to keep everything organized, so that's nice. And kind of what I joked about earlier, obviously, is this Chinese air. I don't know why they needed such a giant box for cards that could easily just fit into these two packages, but I guess that makes the game look more expensive and make people think they're getting more for their money. I don't know. But anyway, that aside, let's set this game up. I'm going to show you how to play it. Alright, here's your typical setup for a two-player game. You're going to have your duel cards here on the far left, which you'll be flipping over to reveal the various duels. You're going to have your draw pile that's going to have your equipment, items, tricks, events, other such things. You have your various ingots, your copper, which have a value of 1, silver 2, gold 3. You have your extra miners pile there, and then each player is going to start with 4 favors, 5 miners, and 5 random cards from the draw pile. There's some mulligan rules in case your draw isn't that good, so keep that in mind. Also, each player, if you so choose, has the opportunity to select a character. And also each player will have a cheat sheet card if they've never played or can't remember the rules. So the first part of your turn is going to be the economy phase. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw 2 cards from the draw pile, look at them, keep one, and just discard the other into a community discard pile. Then from there, you're able to place a miner from your inactive miner pile, and you're also able to move a single miner that is on a mine already to a different mine. So what that means is, on my turn, I'm going to take one of my starting 5 miners and assign him to one of the mines. On your first turn, I believe you have to assign him to the copper mine. Let's do that first. So I'm going to assign him to the copper mine. He is now mining copper ingots. After you've finished placing a miner and or moving a miner between mines, you then will collect your ingots. To mine a copper ingot, you must have 1 miner. To mine a silver, you must have 2 miners. And to mine a gold, you must have 3 miners. So all you're going to do is for each set that you have, so each set of 1, set of 2, and set of 3, they will mine the ingot of the appropriate type. So he's going to mine a copper ingot, I'm going to place it there, and I'm done with that phase. Now if I had 2 miners down here, let's say later in the game, each one is going to mine 1 copper ingot. Same thing with the other 2, silver and gold. You can double up. So once I have 2 miners here, they'll produce a silver. If I have a set of 2 sets of 2 miners, each one will produce 1 silver. So you can have as many sets as you want. Each set will mine 1 of the appropriate type. Now, it's important to know that you cannot stockpile or hoard the various ingots. Once a miner or a group of miners has an ingot on them, they will not mine another until that one is used up. So that brings us to the next phase, which would be the strategy phase. What you're going to do here is use ingots to buy items and events, and you're also going to add ingots to your incomplete items. So let's take a look. In my hand here, you can see that I have 4 event cards, or 3 event cards rather, an item card and a trick. I'll talk about tricks a little bit later, but what's important here during this phase are your items and your events. Events are pretty straightforward. You're going to play them and just pay for them and do what they say. For example, alchemy says here that you can upgrade one of the ingots in an item either from copper to silver or from silver to gold. Or the book says here, draw 3 cards from the draw pile, add them to your hand. Your rival draws 2. And so you can see there's just various different play effects. Gain 1 idle miner. So that will add a miner from the miner pile into your available pool. Okay. Now the cost for these is located on the upper right hand corner. So this particular card costs 3. So what I need to do is pay for it using the ingots, and the value conveniently of each ingot is the number on it. So that number is not only the number of miners needed to mine it, but it's also how much the value is, and it's also the power that it contributes to weapons and items, which we'll go over in a minute. So in order to pay for this one, it costs 3. If I had 3 coppers, I would discard those 3 coppers, just place them back onto the mine, and play this particular card. Now, some of them, as you can see, have the cost written in a color. So for example, this particular card, or this is an even better example, this item costs 3. Now because that 3 is gold and not black like the previous card we looked at, that means that this card must be paid for with a single ingot of that value or higher. So in this case, there's nothing higher than a 3, so you have to pay for this with a gold. You can't use 3 coppers or a silver and a copper or whatever. You have to pay with a single gold piece. Okay, so you can play or pay for as many events as you can afford or choose to play and play them. And then you also, like I alluded to, can purchase items. So I'm going to purchase this hammer, for example. This is a crushing war hammer for 3, and you place the hammer down in front of you here. Now later in the game during the strategy phase, you can add ingots to incomplete items. So just because I pay for this war hammer doesn't mean that it's actually ready to duel with. I need to add ingots to it. The number of ingots that you add to an item is listed on it here, but you can also see from the picture. You have an ingot here for the hammer part, and you have 2 ingots for the handle. Warhammers also happen to have the crushing ability, which I'll talk about later. And this says 3 ingot slots fills 2 hands. If blocked by armor or shield, destroy 1 ingot from that item. That's the effect of crushing. So, like an RPG or an MMO or anything like that, you can only bring into battle what you can hold. This clearly states that a warhammer fills 2 hands, so you cannot bring multiple warhammers or a warhammer and a sword or anything else because you're using both of your hands to carry that one item. So anyway, back to filling up items. Later in the game, maybe I've already paid for this, and I've mined a copper, and so I could use this copper to buy an event or whatever, but instead I choose to add it to the item, so I'm going to simply stick it here on the item. And you can put it however you want. And then later in the game, you can add multiple ingots to an item per turn, that's fine. But once you get it full, so all 3 slots are full, then this item becomes completed and it's ready to be dueled with. You can never, unless there's a card that states otherwise, take ingots away from an item or replace them with different ones. And if you lose ingots due to a crushing weapon, you can never add more. Once the item is built, it is built. Alright, so let's move on to the next phase. That would be the dueling phase. So what you're going to do is you're going to flip a duel into play. So you just go to the duel deck here, flip one of them, and then you're going to choose whether you want to duel or not. You're always going to flip a duel. Once you have 3 duels flipped over, you're not going to flip any more, so you flip up to a maximum of 3. You decide to duel or not. If you back off, then that's fine, you don't have to duel. But if you choose to duel, you're going to select one of the face-up duel cards and challenge your opponent to a duel by slapping them in the face with a white glove. Then what you do is you're going to pick your weapons, then your opponent will pick their weapons, And keeping in mind that various duels have special rules on them. So for example, this particular one is called Swashbuckle Duel. It says swords and concealed weapons allowed, no crushing weapons or shields. So when you select weapons, you have to keep that in mind, and it's also good to keep in mind what your opponent has. So if my opponent only had crushing weapons and I selected that duel, then they would have to come into the battle without any weapons at all. Alright, so let's run over a duel. So let's say it's my turn. I've chosen this duel that we looked at just a second ago, the Swashbuckle Duel. Swords and concealed weapons allowed, no crushing weapons or shields. So we're going to place it right there. I'm going to look at my two weapons. I have a sword and I have a close shaver. Now my sword has 2 copper ingots in it. It's completed, so it has a strength of 2. My close shaver here is completed. It has 1 gold ingot, has a power of 3. I'm going to decide to put my sword into play. Now you may wonder why I'm doing that. You'll see in a second. Now it's my opponent's turn to choose what they're going to bring into play. They have chosen to bring in a sword as well, or a dagger rather, that has 2 copper ingots, so for a power of 2, but they also happen to have a codpiece. A codpiece is not a shield. It is a, well, I think you could tell what that is. It protects the most important part of the male body. And this has a silver ingot in it, and it is completed, and that means this provides a defense of 2 because of that silver ingot. Now, the way that duels work is that after you play your cards or select the equipment that you're going to bring into the duel, you don't have the ability to play tricks. Now, as it stands right now, I would do 2 damage, or attack my opponent with 2. My opponent would attack me back for 2. But they have a codpiece that's protecting them for 2, so my 2 minus their defense nets out to 0. So I would be doing 0 damage to them, whereas they would be dealing 2 damage back to me. The person that does the most damage is the winner. So you can both deal damage to each other, but it really comes down to the person that does the most, and you have to do at least 1. So if everything nets out to 0, then it's a draw. Now, the reason I did this is because I have this card in my hand. This is Throwing Knife. It says, throw a completed concealed weapon at your foe, inflict extra damage equal to that weapon's attack. That concealed weapon must then be discarded. This has a cost of 0, so I don't have to pay anything for it, but if it did have a cost, I would have to have some ingots on miners to pay it. So remember, you don't want to necessarily spend all your copper ingots every turn, because you need to be ready to spend tricks during duels. So I'm going to throw my close shaver at him, blah! And that's going to slit his throat, do 3 damage, and so now he's done 2 to me, I've done 3 to him, because the 2 from this has already been blocked by the codpiece, so in fact I'm going to win the duel, and the winner of the duel is going to take one of their opponent's favors. The first person to collect all 4 favors of their opponent wins. If you do not collect all the favors by the time you've run through the duel deck, then the person with the most favors will win. Or if you've run through the entire draw pile, then whoever has the most favors will win. And one additional thing. If you do win a duel, you do not have to take a favor. In fact, there is another option. You can take 2 new idle miners. That's the main way to get additional miners. So early in the game, that's generally what you're going to do, is get more miners so you can increase your economy and get more weapons out. But keep in mind, you're timed more or less by the fact of the number of duel cards that are left, because those will run out quicker, or probably the quickest. So you need to balance that, claiming those favors versus miners before the duel cards run out. So that's how a round of a Duel Betwixt Us plays. I really think this is an awesome game. Kickstarters get a really bad rap. I personally don't really Kickstarter anymore because of a lot of bad experience I've had. But this is a case of a game that a friend of mine Kickstarted that turned out really, really good. This game is a lot of fun. It's a wonderful 2-player game. It's very easy to learn. It's very quick, and it is delightfully hilarious. This whole, macho, gentlemanly combat is great. The artwork matches the theme perfectly, and it's just hilarious. If you saw on the box cover, you have a guy with a fish trying to beat a guy who has an umbrella as a weapon. And the game and the tricks and the events and the weapons that you have reflect that beautifully. I mean, you have your daggers, but then you saw the close shaver, you have hammers, and you have cane knives. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Then you have some of the funniest trick cards. Like, you have ones where you can call all your miners and tell them to go fight for you. Or you have another one where you grab them, wrap it around you as a human shield, and he takes the damage and then dies afterwards. I mean, the cards are hilarious. The game is hilarious. It's a lot of fun, and it's really quick, which is great. It's a great filler, but it has more. It's more depth and fun than your normal filler, in my opinion. It's definitely a game you can play multiple times over and over, and it's a lot of fun. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is a 2-player game, but it might be ripe for 4 or more than 2, 3, 4 players. So you could definitely house rule some of that in. And the way I envision doing that, I haven't tried it, is that you have a pool of favors and everybody is fighting to get those favors. And and you can select who you can duel, and from them you can steal one of their favors or take idle miners as normal. And then the game ends when the duel cards run out, and whoever has the most favors wins, and have a tiebreaker who has the most miners or the most money or whatever. This game is definitely ripe for expansions. Of course, there's way more weapons that you could add. There's special rules I'm sure you could add, more duel cards, more tricks, etc. So from that respect, I think if this game gains any traction, there's definitely the ability of the publishers and the creator of the game to keep it fresh and new with additional content. I mean, that pretty much wraps it up. There's not a lot more I can say about the game. You saw how easy it was to teach, how easy it is to play. It's a game that I really like. I'll probably pick it up eventually once it hits the mainstream, since I did not do the Kickstarter. But keep in mind, I only had the opportunity to play this game a handful of times before I had to do this review, because I had to bring the game back to my buddy. We're actually going to play it tonight. But I wanted to get this out before the game left my hands back to his house. But it's a great game. I know I'm going to continue to enjoy it. So I hope you like my initial impressions of it. And Duel Betwixt Us is definitely a great game. Should definitely pick a copy of this up and add it to their collection. So, Duel Betwixt Us, thanks for watching Left Hand Reviews. Keep track of me at lefthandreviews.com, facebook.com/lefthandreviews, at lefthandreviews on Twitter, the whole 9 yards. Feel free to leave a comment, let me know what you think about this game, and thanks again for watching Left Hand Reviews. Sammy, don't pout! Just because I beat you doesn't mean that you have to pout. No, come back here. Come back here. What are you doing? Get over here. Come back here.